Okay, so we're going to wrap up with Literary Illuminator.
Alright. The first passage that I found is on page 22, paragraph 1, beginning with prim, and reading to the end of paragraph 2. I would like for Jessica to read aloud this passage. I found this passage important because it shows Katniss's bravery and loyalty, especially with regard to her family. She has a natural instinct to protect. These character traits could both be helpful and harmful within the games, depending on the relationships and alliances she makes with the other tributes. This passage also made me wonder if I would do the same thing in Katniss's situation, which we discussed earlier. I can also connect this passage to another text I've read. The reaping is exactly like the lottery from Shirley Jackson's short story with the same name. This leads me to wonder, does human sacrifice improve the quality of life in society, or does it make society less civilized?
Yeah, we read that short story, The Lottery. This is very similar.
Yeah, so keep that in
That
mind
kind
when
of
you
like
hear
relates
this
back to a
passage.
question we had earlier, wasn't it?
It's synonymous.
It
It's
is.
synonymous. Synonymous?
What question were you thinking?
I think it was like the first or second question we were talking about, like when we had our group. The questions that you came up with.
Why it was divided, why
Or-
do they participate?
Why did the killing?
Why did it?
Would you do it in
Right.
terms of it kind of like
Oh,
a more
yeah.
personal
Yeah.
approach to the same thing.
So the passage that she'd like me to read. Prim. The strangled cry comes out of my throat and my muscles begin to move again. Prim! I don't need to shove through the crowd. The other kids may make way immediately, allowing me a straight path to the stage. I reach her just as she's about to mount the steps. With one sweep of my arm, I push her behind me. I volunteer, I gasp. I volunteer as tribute.
So again, it relates directly to the question, would you do that? So I thought that was a good passage that we discussed.
Very true.
Alright, my second passage I found is on page 57. It's paragraph 7, starting with the bow and arrow, and I'm going to read over to page 58. The reason that I chose this passage, I actually have two reasons. First, it shows Katniss's skill with the knife and her affinity to the weapon, the bow and arrow. And our summarizer told us that the bow and arrow is going to become important, so this is another good passage to focus on. This will probably become important in later chapters as well. Secondly, Haymitch starts to take interest in his tributes, which gives the reader hope that Peeta and Katniss may actually have a shot at winning the games. I can also connect this text to my experiences with the world. Haymitch comments that Peeta and Katniss will be attractive enough, and that Peeta and Katniss both acknowledge the fact that better-looking tributes get more sponsors. This could be considered social commentary. Think about TVs, movies, and magazines. They're all full of attractive people. What does that say about our society, that attractive people get more? I'm not
True.
sure, so think about that while we read this passage. The bow and arrow is my weapon, but I've spent a fair amount of time throwing knives as well. Sometimes, if I've wounded an animal with an arrow, it's better to get a knife into it too, before I approach it. I realize that if I want Haymitch's attention, this is my moment to make an impression. I yank the knife out of the table, get a grip on the blade, and then throw it into the wall across the room. I was actually just hoping to get a good solid stick, but it lodges in the seam between the two panels, making me look a lot better than I am. Stand over here, both of you, says Haymitch, nodding to the middle of the room. We obey, and he circles us, prodding us like animals at times, checking our muscles, examining our faces. Well, you're not entirely hopeless. Seem fit. And once the stylists get a hold of you, you'll be attractive enough. Peeta and I don't question this. The Hunger Games aren't a beauty contest, but the best-looking tributes always seem to pull more sponsors.
Interesting.
Yes.
That is interesting.
So finally, in the middle of the first paragraph on page 92, starting with the plan's the same for both of you, and reading to the end of the third paragraph. I'd like for Jordan to read. I chose this passage because it presents Katniss and Peeta as a team. Something that Katniss has an issue with. This sets up good conflict and keeps the plot moving forward. And I think we talked about earlier too that the relationship between Katniss, Peeta, and Gale, and you can see Katniss's hesitation with forming a relationship with Peeta. So I think this is a good passage to look at. And Katniss really doesn't want to form this trusting relationship with Peeta because she doesn't know if she'll actually be able to kill him if she feels loyal to that person. So this also further illuminates her character traits of loyalty and bravery. And I think in our meeting log it asks us for character traits, so we could put that down, that Katniss displays loyalty and bravery. And this passage helps illuminate that.
Okay, that's on page 92.
Yes.
The plan's the same for both of you. You go to group training, spend the time trying to learn something you don't know, throw a spear, swing a mace, learn to tie a decent knot, save showing what you're best at until your private sessions. Are we clear, says Haymitch. Peeta and I nod. One last thing. In public, I want you by each other's side every minute, says Haymitch. We both start to object, but Haymitch slams his hand on the table. Every minute. It's not open for discussion. You agree to do as I said. You will be together. You will appear amiable to each other. Now get out. Meet Effie at the elevator at 10 for training. I bite my lip and stalk back to my room, making sure Peeta can hear me slam my door. I sit on the bed, hating Haymitch, hating Peeta, hating myself for mentioning that day long ago in the rain.
You're a really good reader.
Thank you.
I like
Thank
the way
you.
you enunciate your words when you read out loud.
And get enthusiastic and emphasizing certain words, true. So we all need to make sure that we jot down the page numbers that we discussed with these three passages here. And what was interesting, just a few words about what was interesting or relevant about them. So everybody, have you jotted down the character traits that we were discussing about Katniss as we were reading? Okay, good. I think we're all set here. Great meeting this week. Any of you have questions? Word Wizard. Next week you will be the discussion director, so you're going to be in charge of running the meeting, keeping an eye on time, reeling us back in, making sure we're on task. So make sure you come up with 5 questions for us. Okay, thought-provoking discussion questions. Summarizer. Next week you're going to be the Word Wizard, so make sure that you're looking for 4 words that are unfamiliar that we can learn from, and make sure you look them up. Look them up on a few different sites to make sure that you know, and check the dictionary if you have one.
Can this ask my mom?
Yeah, you could if she understands and could explain the word to